In August 2017, while at a bar, I unexpectedly bumped into an old friend. We engaged in a lively conversation, sharing laughter as we reminisced about old times. However, our enjoyment was abruptly interrupted when her inebriated acquaintance suddenly appeared out of nowhere and forcefully struck me in the stomach or chest with a stick, completely unprovoked. Overwhelmed by the blow, I collapsed to the ground, struggling to catch my breath while onlookers stared in shock, unsure of how to react. Acting swiftly, the bouncer intervened, dragging me out of the chaotic scene, and the friend I was speaking to offered her sincere apologies. Writhing in pain, I wasted no time and immediately hailed an Uber to rush to the hospital. Thanks to my prompt medical attention, the doctors were able to mitigate the damage. Although I suffered from several broken ribs, naturally, I was seething with anger and promptly filed a police report. Fortunately, the authorities took the matter seriously, diligently gathering evidence that included video footage from the bar, witness testimonies, and statements from all parties involved, including the assailant herself. Despite her repeated attempts to reach out and apologize, I remained resolute in seeking justice and desired to see her face the consequences of her actions. The police assured me that the evidence was sufficient to press charges. However, they warned me that the ultimate severity of the punishment would lie in the hands of the judge. Their prediction was that her affluent background, outstanding academic record, excellent legal representation, and her status as a young white woman might influence the sentencing, resulting in a relatively light penalty. Though the police recommended that I consider accepting a written and verbal apology from the assailant, her lawyer approached me with an appeal to drop the charges. The lawyer explained that she aspired to become a teacher, and a criminal record would thwart that ambition. In an attempt to sway my decision, they presented me with a written apology in advance. Undeterred, I staunchly rejected their proposal, resolved to proceed with the charges. After a 2-year legal battle, the assailant was ultimately convicted, serving a brief 3-week sentence in jail, paying a fine, and being assigned community service. Most significantly, her actions resulted in a permanent criminal record, effectively dashing her dreams of becoming a teacher. Throughout the process, the assailant persistently reached out to me, pleading for forgiveness and imploring me to withdraw the charges. She attributed her behavior to intoxication, expressing remorse and claiming that she had never harmed anyone before. However, considering the unprovoked and unjust nature of the assault, I remained resolute in holding her accountable for her actions, firmly believing that she needed to face the consequences for the harm she caused. Many years ago, I purchased a house in a neighborhood that had a very restrictive homeowners association, HOA, however. My property had existed before the establishment of the HOA and was not subjected to its rules or restrictions. Unfortunately, one of my neighbors took great offense to the fact that I was not part of the HOA and didn't have to adhere to their overly restrictive regulations. From the moment I moved in, he began to give me a hard time. Initially, he resorted to sending me HOA notices, which I had no obligation to follow. When that failed, his harassment escalated. For months on end, this individual would call in noise complaints whenever I had guests over, even though there were no parties, just regular visits. He also habitually reported code violations, constantly finding ways to harass me and my family. My life became a living hell. Then, one night, while friends were visiting, we received yet another knock on the door. It was a police officer responding to yet another noise complaint. We were bewildered. We were simply sitting around playing cards, hardly causing any disturbance. This incident was the final straw, and I resolved to get back at my neighbor. I devised a plan. It's important to note that this occurred about 30 years ago, when cell phones were not commonly used and communication wasn't as easily accessible as it is today. However, since I had always been interested in radios, both my car and house were equipped with two-way radios. Additionally, the layout of the neighborhood worked in my favor. It had only one road in and out, with a convenience store on the corner where I could blend in among the parked cars. We put our plan into action on a Friday night. First, we secured an alibi with a close friend in town who would vouch for us. confirming that we were at his house playing cards all night. Next, I opened the windows and positioned my speakers, connected to my sound system, facing my neighbor's house. We then cleared out a hiding place in a closet that offered a clear view of the driveway. I hopped into my car and drove to the store parking lot, where I had a clear view of all the vehicles entering or leaving the neighborhood. Once we confirmed that communication between us was effective, it was time to put the plan into motion. My wife turned on the stereo, playing rock music at full volume, which reverberated through the neighborhood. Simultaneously, every light in the house illuminated. The music was so loud that I could hear it from the store, which was over half a mile away. We waited. Sure enough, after about 30 minutes, a police car entered the neighborhood. I relayed the message to my wife via radio. Working together, she and her sister swiftly turned off the stereo, removed the speakers from the windows, closed them, switched off the lights, and then hid in the closet. The police arrived, pulled into the driveway, and discovered what appeared to be an empty, dark house. The windows were shut, the doors locked, curtains open, lights off, and the driveway devoid of any cars. My wife and her sister remained silent in the closet while the officers knocked on doors, shone flashlights into windows, and circled the house. Eventually, they concluded that the house was unoccupied and departed. I watched as they left the neighborhood and headed back toward town. We waited for about 30 minutes and repeated the entire procedure. Windows open, speakers up, stereo blaring, lights on. Approximately 15 minutes passed before the police returned. Once again, I communicated with my wife via radio. Windows closed, speakers lowered, lights off. The police officers revisited my house. They tried every door, spent more time peering through the windows, and even sat in their car out front for about 20 minutes before leaving. Roughly 15 minutes after they disappeared toward town, we repeated the entire process once more. This time, it took less than 5 minutes before the police returned, and this time, their blue lights were flashing. Oh no! The police pulled into my empty driveway, but promptly reversed and headed to my troublesome neighbor's house. They remained there for over 30 minutes. My wife couldn't hear every word exchanged, but there was shouting and cursing involved. Eventually, the police left. My wife radioed me, and I made my way back home. 2 days later, my neighbor's name appeared in the local newspaper, charged with misuse of police resources or filing a false report. I don't recall the exact charges. After all, it has been 3 decades. But from that night onward, I never received another complaint, visit from the city or the police. The harassment finally ceased. I work for a suit company. We're only online, so we get a lot of customer service calls, and my main job is to be the web designer, but it's a smaller company, so I help to pick up calls when I'm not super busy. Anyway, I got a call today from a lady who sent us a return about a week ago. Usually returns are a complete pain because our company only has physical records of returns since we're still in the process of digitizing them. I find the lady's return, and it turns out she ordered 3 suits but returned 2 of them. The 2 she returned were closeouts, meaning at checkout she took 30% off both of them, but on the invoice it doesn't show the discount on the price itself, it shows at the total, "That will be important for later." So I add up the total of her 2 returned, and it comes out to $219. I didn't factor in the coupon she took off because I know that she spent money to send us the suits back and is probably unhappy about having to do that, and it's okay for us to eat the cost since she's a returning customer. She orders kind of often. So she places another order with me to replace the 2 dresses she sent back, which total $219. And I let her know that we're even on the order, and she just needs to give me her card info so we can process the outgoing shipping. Now, the thing with our company is that we always give free shipping on original orders, no matter how much the order costs. You can order 20 suits and we'll send them out for free. However, if you return anything, that's on you. If you don't like something, it's on you to ship it back to us with your money. So this lady was pissed about having to pay the $10 and started going off on me about how she already paid $40 to send the suits back to us, and I have no right to charge her an extra $10 because of that, and I have no right to charge her the amount she actually owes, which is nothing. When I heard the amount she actually owes, that's where the malicious compliance kicked in. I told her, Okay, if you are uncomfortable paying the $10 outgoing shipping and want to be charged the rightful amount, I'm going to have to hand you over to the financial department to handle that. Now, mind you, the financial department is just my boss's wife, and we're all very close in the office because, as I said, it's a small company. Anyway, our financial department picks up and informs our customer that they actually owe us closer to $90 since they took the coupon on our closeout items. Our angelic customer then tries to wiggle out of it by lying about how I told her the shipping was free, so why would she have to pay it all, etc. Anyway, in the end, my boss ended up getting on the call and she ended up paying way more for her returns. Moral of the story: don't try and nickel and dime when you have no right to. Years ago, I found myself working at a state government agency under the supervision of a boss named Shannon. Shannon's mother held a significant position within the governor's party, and her influence secured Shannon's political appointment. Consequently, Shannon possessed a level of clout and protection that shielded her from consequences. Regrettably, Shannon proved to be incompetent at her job. She frequently absented herself from the office, claiming to attend various meetings that often translated to extended lunches, socializing over coffee, or indulging in shopping trips. In addition to her chronic absenteeism, Shannon displayed bullying tendencies, wielding the threat of termination to manipulate and control her subordinates. Strangely, despite her authoritarian behavior, she rarely bothered to supervise or manage any tasks herself. It wasn't long before Shannon's unlikable demeanor permeated the entire building. Given the agency's large size, earning such universal dislike required a truly remarkable effort. The biggest challenge was that Shannon, as a political appointee, appeared untouchable. Even those with the authority to terminate her employment found their hands tied due to her influential family connections. This included the agency's third-ranking individual, who also held a political appointment. Yet, after a year of unexplained meetings and extended absences, Shannon's flimsy excuses began catching up to her. The agency director ultimately decided to remove her from her position and assigned her to oversee special projects. In corporate settings, being relegated to special projects was often a euphemism for being incapable of fulfilling one's previous responsibilities. Shannon was effectively stripped of power without being outright fired. For a while, it seemed as though Shannon had received the message. She made an effort to improve, refraining from disappearing for hours and treating others with a modicum of respect. However, this temporary transformation didn't last, and Shannon soon reverted to her old ways. Around that time, a new assistant director named Tricia joined the agency. Tricia, another political appointee, assumed the second highest position in the organization. Working under her proved to be a refreshing experience. She approached her job with a strong sense of professionalism and dedication. Given her position, Tricia had access to Shannon's electronic calendar and became aware of Shannon's activities. She decided to cross-reference the security logs to verify Shannon's presence within the building. Following a brief investigation, Tricia composed an email to Shannon, confronting her with a list of dates and requesting an explanation for the extensive duration of these alleged meetings. Shannon, feeling her character under attack, reacted with indignation. She believed Tricia's inquiry to be an outrageous affront. In an impulsive act, Shannon hastily drafted a resignation letter and slammed it down on Tricia's desk, believing it would serve as a decisive display of defiance. However, after a few hours, Shannon's initial rage subsided and the reality of her situation sank in. She remembered she had a 1-year-old child waiting at home, an unskilled truck driver husband struggling to make ends meet on a meager $8 per hour wage, and that she served as the primary breadwinner for her family. Swallowing her pride, Shannon approached Tricia with a sincere apology for her earlier behavior. She expressed her willingness to improve and pleaded with Tricia to retract her resignation letter, hoping for a second chance. Regrettably for Shannon, Tricia calmly responded, "I'm sorry, but it's too late. I've already processed your resignation letter and forwarded it to HR. There's no way to undo it." In that moment, it felt like a scene reminiscent of the movie The Incredibles, where Mr. Incredible battled a seemingly invincible ball with legs. The ball's only vulnerability was itself. Likewise, The once untouchable political appointee had unknowingly orchestrated her own downfall. Shannon's self-termination had been sealed by the only person with the authority to fire her, Shannon herself. Astonishingly, Tricia refused to intervene or undo Shannon's impulsive decision, allowing her to suffer the consequences of her own actions. As news of Shannon's self-firing spread throughout the building, incredulous cries of "What? Are you serious?" were quickly replaced by uproarious laughter as each person learned the extraordinary tale. Shannon was finally out, and everyone who had endured her tyranny breathed a collective sigh of relief, reveling in the newfound freedom from her oppressive presence.